Welcome to another edition of Take 5. Going to be a short one today. Just don't have much time to get this one up, but I didn't get it up yesterday, so I want to make sure I at least do it today. We are in Acts chapter 2, and we're going to start in verse 14. Then Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice, and addressed the crowd. Fellow Jews, and all of you who live in Jerusalem, let me explain this to you. Listen carefully to what I say. These men are not drunk as you suppose. It's only 9 in the morning. No, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Alright, I guess you could call this the introduction to the sermon. Peter's about to preach this incredible sermon. And he says, what you've been seeing and hearing, the speaking of tongues, this is what was prophesied. This isn't because these guys are drunk. It was prophesied by Joel. And he's about to preach a sermon where he shows how everything that happened in the Old Testament pointed toward Jesus. So it's really good that he starts by going back even to what they're seeing right now was mentioned in the Old Testament. See, the Jews there would have been familiar with the Old Testament. So, some of the things that he was talking about, they would see either right then with the tongues and things like that, which it doesn't mention, the Joel passage doesn't mention tongues, but prophesying and things like that they would start seeing, and then, of course, the sun turning to darkness, moon to blood, and some of those things perhaps be seen later when Jesus comes back, but he's just pointing out this is the look. What's happening is not coincidence or accident. God had promised it, and he's just fulfilling his promise. And I just want to encourage you with that fact that God always fulfills his promises, and he's made a bunch of them to you and to me personally. I would encourage you to go to the scriptures, look at everything he's promised us, and realize he will fulfill all those things. Hey, come back tomorrow where we get really into the meat of this sermon on the next edition of Take 5.